One of the things I like about the NFL draft is the running back position and the ability to find starters on day 2 and sometimes starters and key contributors on day 3. There are other positions you look at and you say sometimes like offensive line, defensive line, when you start getting into day 3, you're like, if they're a role player, they're lucky. But not so much with the running back position. And especially with the running back position, you can find Pro Bowlers and all pros in the second and third round. And with this year's draft, you got a lot of focus on Bijan Robinson, and then secondarily, Jahmyr Gibbs. And then you try to figure out who's that next running back. Who's running back 3? Who's the next guy at the top of that list? That second tier, if you will. That guy that you look at and you say, this looks like a future feature back in the NFL. And for me, that guy is Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. While I don't put him in that same tier as Gibbs and Robinson, when I think about that second tier of backs, those guys that I would start to look at in round 2, he may not end up being the third running back taken in this draft, but when I look at guys that I feel confident about having 3 down abilities at the next level, Charbonnet is near the top of that list for sure. And what do I really like about him? He's got great hands. He's a very natural pass catcher. And you certainly saw that under Chip Kelly in 2022. He's got really good body control as well to adjust to throws that are off the mark. So sometimes when you talk about running backs, there are like different phases and different levels in terms of their pass catching ability. And for him, it doesn't just have to hit him right in the numbers or be right in front of him. He has the athleticism, the ability to adjust to throws that are behind him, throws that are too high, and not just have him go bouncing off of his hands, which, admittedly is an important skill for NFL running backs, because not every throw when you're coming out of the backfield is going to be spot on the money. As a runner, he's able to get extra yards when he lowers his shoulder. He runs with some, big dick energy, if you will. He will plow through you. He is able to churn out yards between the tackles. He has the vision to find the running lane, also shows the ability to anticipate one when it's developing, so be able to quickly react to something that isn't quite there yet, but when it is, he's already reacted to it. He's a patient runner, and I really like this about him. He's got patience. He allows the blocking to develop in front of him. Sometimes with these more powerful backs, there's kind of that urge to just sit there and plow into the line, and sometimes you run up into the backs of your offensive lineman. Not with Charbonnet. He's got enough patience to allow his blocking to develop in front of him. And also when you're talking about 3-down skills, so often you'll focus on the pass protection or the pass catching element, and you forget about the pass protection elements. And not every time you have a running back on the field in 3rd down or in obvious passing situations are you going to be able to deploy them as a receiver, as a pass catcher, as a safety valve. Sometimes the safety valve comes with them picking up a blitzer, helping to chip on an edge rusher, or chip on an interior lineman, and he's got good feel and power as a pass protector. He's able to find his blocking assignment, and he actually holds up relatively well compared to a number of other running backs in this draft class. In terms of his cutting ability, he's able to make subtle cuts in the open field to give him more space. So, this is a guy that can cut on the move. You have some guys that can jump cut behind the line, but then once they get out into space or once they're between the tackles, their cutting ability really goes away. It's minimal, or they require a lot of gather to be able to do it, and it really slows them down. Not with Charbonnet. His cutting ability is really smooth. His jump cuts are also solid, and it allows him to be able to get some extra yards. It allows him to get off of his initial look as a runner to be able to adjust to where the blocking may be developing backside. So a lot of really good traits for Charbonnet. I'm surprised, frankly, that this guy doesn't get a little more attention. I don't view him in the Gibbs and Robinson tier, don't get me wrong, but this guy certainly has plenty of the hallmarks of what I would look for in a 3-down starting NFL running back. Now, certainly he has some weaknesses, and it's these weaknesses that keep him out of that top tier and keeps him more at the high end of that second tier of running backs in this draft class. His short area quickness and long speed are adequate. They're not great. Like, he's not totally slow of foot. He's not heavy-footed, but he's not a fantastic athlete. I think he has enough quickness. He has enough long speed to be able to get some big chunk plays, but certainly not up to the same level of a Gibbs or a Robinson in this draft class. And, when you're taking running backs high, you do want guys that can produce chunk plays as a runner. He can produce some, but like I said, not on that same level. As a pass catcher, as a receiver, his route tree's a little limited. Most of his pass catching comes out of the backfield. He's not somebody you're going to line up out wide or in the slot a whole lot. So while he can contribute in the passing game, it's much more as a secondary or tertiary option. It's going to be more as a safety valve check down kind of guy than it is like a primary, we're going to manufacture touches for him in the passing game type of option. Also, as a runner, he has some times where he runs a little too upright. He's kind of inconsistent in terms of his bend and his pad level. I would like to see him not run as upright sometimes because he can pack a wallop when he lowers his shoulder and runs with good pad level. And the more consistently he could do that, the more he can gain tough yards in the NFL. Because look, a lot of times when I'm watching these running backs and I'm thinking about what are NFL runs, you can get caught up in the big spectacular and say, man, that's an NFL play. And certainly they are, right? But it's those guys that can take a nothing run and gain 2 yards, gain 3 yards, because they're able to run through contact. They're able to pick up additional yards. They're able to fall forward. Those, to me, are even more critical NFL caliber runs. And when Charbonnet lowers his shoulder, to me, he can be one of the best in this draft class at making those small NFL runs that really, really matter. But at times, he can run a little too upright. And, sometimes when you talk about guys and their cutting ability and their stutter steps, sometimes when he's making cuts, especially when he's closer to full speed or when he makes a stutter step, he can make it, but he does require a little effort to get back up to speed, so it can slow him down a little bit. But this is also, one of the reasons why he's not viewed quite in that top tier. He's in that second tier of running backs. But I really liked him. I watched Charbonnet and I said, this to me is a dude that I could back. This is a dude that I feel certainly is a 3-down starter at the National Football League level because he's a between the tackles runner with some physicality, but a little bit of agility and wiggle, a little bit of creativity as a runner. So he's not just one-dimensional as a runner. When you talk about being able to stay on the field in third down, he's got really nice soft hands. He can do some things when he's in the open field. He can make a few guys miss. He could certainly be a challenge for defensive backs to have to bring down. Like Charbonnet can run angry. And when he does, he can be tough for a corner or safety to have to bring down. His abilities in pass protection, I look at this guy and I see a 3-down starting NFL running back. When I was thinking about NFL comparisons for him, I was thinking and I said, maybe David Johnson. Going back to his UNI days, I was trying to think of who does Charbonnet remind me of in terms of play style, in terms of run style. Now, Johnson, I think, had a little more translatable athleticism, and he was an even more dangerous weapon as a pass catcher, mind you. But there were certainly some similarities what I saw in 2022 out of Charbonnet at UCLA and what I saw going back to 2015 with David Johnson at UNI. And I was pretty high on Johnson coming out of UNI. I know he kind of fizzled out quickly, but he had a few years there, obviously, where he played at a high level, got himself a massive second contract. If Charbonnet has a David Johnson-like career, you don't feel too bad about taking him in the second round, which is where I have his grade. He, to me, is running back 3 in this draft. I love when he's determined and he lowers his shoulder. He brings a punch. He brings a wallop. He brings some of that big dick energy you want from a feature back with the ability to stay on the field for all 3 downs. So while lacking, the quickness and the speed and the true home run ability of Gibbs and Robinson in this draft class, when you're talking about a steady guy that you feel could be like an average to above average even starter as a running back in the National Football League, I think Charbonnet is the most likely guy in this draft class.